When you're doing some research about book covers and trying to find some other samples that you like, there's a few things you should watch out for. The first is the literary fiction effect. If you Google great book covers, what you're going to find is a bunch of articles that talk about literary fiction book covers, and the things that designers like and designers say are really good book covers, they're not going to be what you'd expect to find on Pulp Fiction covers. They're going to be literary fiction. They're going to be redos of classic literary texts. The people who are the most famous book covers designers in the world, like if there's a few who are known as book cover designers, but they're doing very creative, high level, usually remakes of older famous books, or they're doing best-selling literary fiction. So they're doing kind of they're allowed to take risks and to do new and innovative and interesting things. They're allowed to be more symbolic or artistic or creative. They don't need to sell the books. So the type of art that they're doing to put on the book cover is really different than the type of book cover that you're going to want to sell your book if you're starting with no platform. And you also need to watch out for the indie published bestseller effect. Some indie authors are doing really, really well, and some of them think their book cover is probably pretty good because they're selling so well, but there's a huge disconnect between what's selling well and the quality of the cover. Like I said earlier, a good cover doesn't necessarily guarantee good sales, but there's a lot of self-published authors who have a big platform and they talk a lot about book cover design, but they don't really know. Just because they're selling a lot of books doesn't really make them experts in book cover design. And I know a lot of indie authors who don't have very good book covers, and they're selling despite their covers. They could be selling much more with a better cover, but they're selling enough that they're building a platform, and they know enough about book marketing to say something about book cover design. But you want to make sure when you're looking at, I've known people who they'll go into the best-selling book like the category for their genre, and they'll look at the best-selling books, but all the books that are best-selling are self-published books because they're using guerrilla marketing strategies like low pricing. And so they see these top 20 book covers, then they're all not very good. So they try to make a book cover like those because they're selling well. There are certain genres where it's totally dominated by indie or self-published authors because they can use low pricing or other marketing hacks to stay on the top of the bestseller list. That doesn't mean that they have the best covers. And so the platform effect is kind of the same thing. It's just if you look at just the big best-selling authors who are traditionally published, they already have a platform, so they don't need to use the book cover to sell the book as much as you do. And so there are some mega best-selling authors who they already have a readership. They're going to be bestsellers no matter what they write, so they can do more interesting things with their book cover. Still, I find most Pulp Fiction authors, they're not taking huge risks. They're still, designing covers that fit in the genre and attract the right kind of readers. But they're also not, they don't have to be as obvious. They don't have to be as immediate and obvious with their book cover design as you may want to be. So just when you're researching book covers, keep those things in mind and try to focus on, you don't want it to be cheesy or cliche, but you want it to be really obvious about what your book cover is representing, what the genre is, what your book is about, who's going to like it. You don't want to mislead, and you don't want to make it hard to figure out, or you don't want them to look and be like, well, I don't know what that is. I don't know, if it appeals to me. I don't know what genre it is. So there's a balance between being cheesy and being too obvious. Mostly if it's well designed, if it's professional, if it's clean, you can make it look attractive and powerful even without really telling much about the book. It's all just in the colors and the pictures. A beautiful landscape can trigger the right muscles better than something more meaningful and symbolic. The cover doesn't explain, it just attracts. So you don't need to. These are 3 examples of best-selling books that don't actually say very much. I mean, you've got a picture of a European town, you've got a tree that's sideways, and then a more standard kind of thriller. And you can tell just by the colors, they kind of represent a certain mood or feeling that represents a genre. And the text in all 3 is really simple. I mean, the Silkworm has a more fancy font, but otherwise they're all using pretty standard serif fonts. This kind of font that they're using is also it's more common. But they're not complex. They're not trying to do too much. I mean, they're not cramming all the text in. So you really want to keep it as simple as you can, and just do something that kind of fits the book, but having something more beautiful and powerful is more important than having something that really says everything about the book.